with the way you turned out. We all are. But the good news is it's not your fault.
Hey, hello, how do you do? shadydorags here, King of the Hill. I can finally scratch this one off the list. Yeah, I've been getting requests from you intellectuals to look over this classic for quite some time. For those of you who don't know, King of the Hill is an adult animation that aired from the late 90s to the late 2010s. The show is about Hank Hill, a conservative Texan who goes through mundane yet slightly exaggerated adventures with his family, friends, co-workers, etc. Think of a 90s F is for family, only way more nuanced and a lot less sweary. I absolutely love this show. It's got fantastic, memorable characters, and I generally like the lessons it teaches. True, not every episode is a home run. Mr. Insert Not for Jake can tell you more about the bad ones. But ask anyone who's seen the show and you'll hear way more good things than you will bad. And by the way, if you ever want an adult cartoon that you can watch with your kids, this is probably the best contender. There are a lot of good episodes, as well as a lot of bad ones, I could have potentially looked over for my first review of this show. But for quite some time, I've had a fascination with one in particular for reasons I'll go over at the end of the video. For now, let's go ahead and get to talking about the episode, Taking It to the Streets. The episode starts in the usual place, Hank and the boys drinking in the alleyway. Suddenly, a helicopter flies over and Bill gives some exposition.
We're having war games this week. It's kind of like our team bus.
Well, the conversation has shifted to being about both sports and the Army, which means Hank should be chiming in 3, 2, 1.
Yeah? How's your team doing, Bill?
No, they won't let me play.
Bill reveals that, despite being in the Army, he isn't allowed to participate in the games. Shoot, he's not allowed to do much of anything other than cut hair, and because that's all he does, it's been giving him wrist problems lately. The point of all this exposition is to show that Bill has a problem in his life, how important he is to his workplace, and how his lack of said importance is inconveniencing him. It's not a major issue for Bill, just some minor complaints among friends, but Dale helps push it to another level.
Oh, give yourself a break, Bill. You do more than cut hair. You also straighten out magazines and empty ashtrays.
Don't listen to him. You're a very important cog in the military machine.
Put a pin in that for later. Khan comes around and brags about his new SUV. It immediately turns around on him when he can't fit it in the garage. Then the episode cuts to his B story, Peggy and Bobby getting ice cream, which I'm going to talk about in its entirety right now because it really doesn't have much to do with anything. There's a deal at the Megalomart to guess the weight of the ice cream you made. Guess right, and the ice cream is free. Peggy accepts the challenge and, with her ego, is very confident in her answer. She not only guesses wrong, but embarrassingly wrong. This activates her competitive spirit, and she becomes obsessed with guessing correctly, doing things like taking Bobby out of school just to help her practice. It all ends with Peggy eventually guessing the weight perfectly. It's somewhat disappointing that the B story never really collides with the A story in any significant way, nor is there really any big payoff, but it does contain some amusing jokes and allows for a nice distraction when you might be getting tired of the A story. And real quick, I want to say, I don't know if I'm completely on board with the hate Peggy tends to get. Yeah, she does some of the worst things in the show, and there are times where she aggravates the crap out of me. But more often than not, I find her shenanigans more funny than frustrating. Like, if you ranked all the characters in order of scumminess, I don't hate Peggy nearly as much as Buck Strickland, Nancy Gribble, or my arch nemesis, John Redcorn. Back to the plot, we see Bill discussing the war games with his fellow soldiers. We've done some telling, now let's do some showing.
Hey, another good way to avoid snipers?
Yeah, well, with all due respect, we're talking about blowing things up, not blowing things dry.
Ah, my wrist! My wrist is to stop clipping, sir!
Dean Hyde.
So we now have a demonstration of the inferiority Bill was feeling earlier. Not only is his advice rejected because of what he does, but the soldier didn't have any sympathy for Bill when he cried out in pain.
It's carpal tunnel syndrome. You'll have to lay off cutting hair for 2 weeks. If you don't mind, we need the bed for some soldiers. I mean, real soldiers. I mean, do you know what I mean?
And example number 2 of the Army treating Bill like he's worthless. Remember that comment made by Hank?
Don't listen to him. You're a very important cog in the military machine.
Yeah, what Hank said is true, but given what Bill's going through, it certainly doesn't feel that way. A cog in a machine, no matter how small, is important because if it stops working, the entire thing falls apart. Bill's injury seems like a minor nuisance to the Army. In fact, it's more of a burden to them to allow him to stay in their infirmary to heal. Bill gets a look at his medical history and sees that a good portion of it has been censored out. Like anything that happens during the day, he decides to discuss it with the boys in the alley.
Any of you guys have large portions of your medical chart blacked out? Is that something to worry about?
Only if the idea of a massive cover-up concerns you. Gee.
Hank suggests that Bill go through the proper channels and request paperwork to retrieve his file. Dale has another idea.
Exterminator.
Oh, Dale.
Exterminator.
Anyone who tells you this show isn't funny is a filthy, stinking liar. Dale is able to get Bill's medical records to show to the rest of the boys. Turns out Bill's medical file is blacked out because the government spent some years experimenting on him, giving him drugs that would ultimately mutate his body.
The drug was designed to promote accumulation of heat-retaining blubber on the torso, foster the growth of insulating body hair, and create the ability to undertake long periods of hibernation. They called it Operation Infinite Walrus.
I gave 20 years of my life to the Army, and this is what they did to me?
Bill, horrified and disgusted at what happened, drinks his sorrows away.
What the?
I'll be in the safe room. Don't let them take you alive, dear.
Hank sees a tank running crazy in his neighborhood. Naturally, he chads up to see what's going on.
Oh, it's Bill. He's soused to the gills.
It's only Bill. I scalded off my fingerprints
Oh,
for nothing.
how?
I really need you guys
How,
to
Dale?
understand.
How'd you
Dale
get out of
ran
that
into
tank?
his closet and then came out of a sewer.
Yeah.
Hank and the others
How-
decide that the
how
best way
did
to
he
keep
come
Bill
out of
from
that
being
sewer?
in prison for the rest of his
It's
life
never
is to
funny.
return to the tank without anyone noticing. And like good old-fashioned Americans, they argue who gets to drive it. Dale wins because if one of these three knows how to drive a tank, it's him.
On the voice, hot
Trying to get revenge on Colin, who really didn't deserve any. He didn't do anything to deserve
Okay,
it.
so I will continue to say that this show overall is freaking genius when it comes to comedy, but this joke right here just doesn't work. For one, Khan didn't do anything within the episode to deserve this. Yeah, he was a pompous jerk earlier, but that doesn't warrant having his brand new car destroyed. Second, the whole point of this scene is to prevent Bill from getting in trouble, which Khan doesn't care about. There's no way he would have stayed quiet about the whole thing if he lost his car in the process. Anyway, on their way back to the base, Bill feels sick, so everyone stops the tank to get out. Is there a reason Boomhauer decided to chew gum? And then he just stops. Like, why? Bill admits how he's disappointed that he put all his faith into the Army and they took away what made him special. And what follows is probably the most important moment in the episode.
Confidence, the charm, the pep, they're still a part of you. They're just hidden inside the government's bloated, lazy body.
What? So, it's not my fault that I'm fat, bald, and lazy?
Hank begins lifting Bill's spirit by assuring him that pretty much every problem in his life, everything he's been feeling down about lately, isn't his fault, and that in turn is a good thing. In fact, Hank's so confident about it that everyone begins listing tons of things wrong with Bill that they were keeping hidden. Because if it's not his fault, he can't feel bad about it.
You think I'm boring too?
Oh, yeah, but don't take it personally. You see, it's...
Not my fault. I'm not a loser. Deep down under all this government ape fur, I'm a winner.
Knowing that everything that's wrong with him isn't his fault, Bill gets the confidence, and sobriety, I guess, to drive the tank back to base. Along the way, the guys get pulled over by the police, but with a new confident Bill, they manage to talk their way out of it.
Now I suggest you get back inside that black and white and forget everything you've seen here. Do I make myself clear?
Yes, sir.
All right, move out.
So the tank is driven into a field where other tanks are waiting. It seems like all's well that ends.
Oh no.
Well, they're gonna die. Bill accidentally drove the tank onto the target range of the war games, and it's only a matter of time before their tank is hit.
Bill, you spent 20 years on this base. How do we get off this dang target range?
Don't worry, my years of military training will take over.
What are you asking Bill for? The Army destroyed all his brain cells with their deadly placebo drug. No wonder he's an ignoramus.
The amount of things that made that sentence funny is utterly ridiculous. So it's revealed that the Army gave Bill a placebo. He was not filled with body-mutating drugs, but just sugar water. The Army, in fact, did not do anything that caused Bill to be the way he is. Well, that's a good thing, right?
Nuh-uh. It means everything is my fault. The fat, the fur, and all those other things I didn't even know were wrong with me.
But enough feeling sorry for Bill, because he has a plan. He's gonna drive the tank as a distraction while the rest of the boys get to safety.
Don't worry about me. I'll use my boxer shorts to tie down the accelerator, and then I'll jump out too.
As we see the others escape, we're shown Bill closing the hatch behind them, hinting that he knows he won't be joining them. Bill then drives the tank away from his friends, singing Freebird as he does, basically prepared to die. You could take this scene one of two ways. One possibility is that Bill knew tying down his boxer shorts was a ludicrous idea. He just wanted everyone else to get to safety. Another possibility is Bill could have escaped with the rest of them, but with the recent knowledge that everything bad about his life is indeed his own fault, he decided he's better off dead. I think the second interpretation has a more impactful meaning, but there's not enough evidence to say that's definitely what the writers intended. Eventually, Bill's tank does get hit.
I wish I would have told him that he was a brave man. Honest, sweet, like a big old stuffed teddy bear.
Don't worry, nobody dies in this episode. They just get really big boo-boos.
I heard what you guys said, though, that I was brave and honest and a good friend. Do you still think that now that I'm not dead?
Yep.
This is why the second interpretation of Bill giving his life feels more impactful to me. Bill hearing his friends compliment him when they thought he was dead, and that they still believe it even though he's alive, seems to give him the confidence he needs to keep living. Hey, why did those army guys stop fire? So it's a new day. and
What?
instead
Yeah,
of
why
work,
did those
turns out
army
Bill
guys
has
stop
a fully
firing at
broken
them?
arm.
It's too short, uneven, and you totally obliterated
That
one of my
thing is never
sideburns.
explained.
But on the plus side, I must say your breath is unusually minty and inoffensive.
Sir, I'm brushing every day now, sir.
And that was taking it to the streets. So, why of all the episodes of King of the Hill did I decide to start with this one? It's not considered one of the best episodes, nor is it the worst. And while there are some emotional moments in it, there are certainly ones higher on the list I could have gone for. Well, it's because this episode talks about a problem that, while I don't think was a big deal at the time it was made, is something that's big now. Victim mentality. For those of you who might be relatively new to the channel, victim mentality is something I bring up from time to time because I absolutely despise it. It's a bit of a complicated subject, but to simplify it, there's a decent size of Western society that, when dealing with problems in their lives, rather than look at themselves, their instinct is generally to blame others. Essentially, they look for opportunities to be seen as victims. There's a lot I could talk about when it comes to this topic, and I have in the past. But taking it to the streets helps answer one specific question. That question being, why would anyone want to be a victim? Bill was unappealing in many different ways. Through many examples in the first half of the episode, we can see how this affected his life negatively, making it a problem. Bill thinks the army caused this problem, and it initially sends him spiraling. But then Hank reveals the secret positive side of being a victim. When you're a victim, it's not your fault. Bill being overweight and boring and smelly is not his fault. When something isn't your fault, you can still feel bad that it happened, but any guilt, anger, resentment, or other strong emotions you're feeling can be directed at whomever else is to blame. No matter who's to blame, Bill was going to have those problems in his life. But now that he knows it's not his fault, he can feel good about himself again, because he did nothing wrong. And not only that, but his friends now see him in a different light. They now value him more. And this is where I feel a large chunk of society is now. Take something mundane like failing to get a job. If you go to an interview, yet come out empty-handed, it sucks thinking that you weren't good enough. But if you can blame someone else, like believing the interviewer didn't know what they were doing, at the very least, you can still feel good about yourself. You still feel worthy, both in your own eyes and in the eyes of others whom you can convince. The more of your own problems you can blame on someone else, the better you feel about yourself. When I say people with victim mentalities want to be victims, I'm not saying people want their lives ruined by someone else, though those weirdos certainly do exist. I'm saying people want to blame their already existing problems on factors they can't control, specifically on other people, to make themselves feel good and to make others side with them, whether intentionally or subconsciously. Believe it or not, it can very easily feel worse to know that you're the cause of your own problems. Once it's revealed that Bill was given a placebo, he felt worse about himself than when he believed he was experimented on. A, because that little validation he had been given was determined to be a lie, and B, because his friends made him aware that things were actually worse than what he thought. If you're on this channel, you've heard this lesson before. As Todd would say,
you are all the things that are wrong with you.
but just as this episode shows the value some people gain from having a victim mentality, it also shows the value of letting it go. At the end of the episode, we see Bill doing small things to improve himself. He's practicing cutting hair with his left hand, and he's changed up his brushing routine. Now that Bill has accepted that he's the one causing his own problems, he's also aware of the fact that he has the power to fix them. Obviously, there are going to be times in your life where something goes wrong and you're not to blame for it. But I think it's better to always try to look at yourself before looking at others, even in situations where you clearly are the victim. To be easily ready to blame others for your problems is to believe you have no control over your life. But to admit to the part you played, no matter how minor, is to understand what control you do have and the best way to work towards fixing things. This has been Shady Durags. So long, farewell, Auf Wiedersehen, goodbye.